get into a part of the show here we call Center Stage. And it is a new segment we're working on here. And it is a part of the show where we feature guests, special topic of interest, special segment related to the pillars. And today, we're welcoming back our regular guest on Wednesdays, Rich Ingram. We found the guy just over there. Hey, Rich, why don't you come hang out with us? I'll come hang out with you guys. So Rich he is the GOAT, yeah. So Rich, I wanted to spend some time on Center Stage, Rich, because I'm pretty certain, my friend. I know we had you in a couple weeks ago. We've been talking about everything, but I really don't think John Anderson's accomplished some pretty crazy shit in his lifetime, and so is Marty Fitt. But I really don't think these two guys have sat down and really understood some of the shit that you've done with Leadville 100 and some of the shit that you're going to do with the Canyons race you got coming up here in a few months. So I really want to lean in for the next 12 minutes into the Leadville 100 and into the Canyons race coming up. Let's just talk about 100 kilometers, 100-mile races, ultra marathons, like what you put yourself through. I want you to dial into Marty and John so that by the end of the segment, they're like, holy fuck, man, you're like a machine. Let's go there, Richie Rich. So 100 miles, the Leadville 100. Let's dig into that, pal. Dig fully into the Leadville 100 for us, Richie.
Yeah, the one tough thing about Leadville is altitude. A lot of guys will tell you, like professional athletes will tell you, it's not that difficult of a course. It has maybe 17,000 feet of climbing, which sounds like a lot. I know it sounds like a lot of climbing, but when you're talking about 100, it is not really that much. It's not that technical. There's a lot of Forest Service roads, but it starts at 10,000 feet of elevation. So
hold on.
Yeah, I got a quick question.
Hold on, Johnny. I got to interrupt.
Okay, I'm ready.
Anybody who's doing 100. So Richie Ingram, you can't come on this show and say that it's actually not a lot. 100 fucking miles?
So, I mean, 100 miles is 100 miles.
Starting at 10,000 feet.
I know.
It's all relative, though. You look at these guys that, because a lot of people say, oh, man, it's 100 miles. I didn't start off running 100 miles, man. I started off running 3 miles. I started off doing walk runs. Man, it's been a progression of getting there. And so when you look at the guys that are way better than me, they come out and like in European races and a lot of other races, you might have 30,000 feet of climbing in 100 miles on technical trail. And so when you get to that level, it's a whole different ball game. But when you're climbing up, let's say a Jeep trail and it's a long climb, that's a lot easier because you not have to necessarily focus on what your footing is and stuff like that. So it just depends on the type of race. But in Leadville, there's only a couple technical points of it. I know you're still laughing, but it's relative.
Just humble. Yeah, just humble.
You know, I got to just ask this question because I'm wondering, so I have to imagine the viewers are too.
Yes.
Is Leadville a place or is Leadville just saying your legs are like lead in this race?
I think a little bit of both. It's an interesting thing in Leadville. So the Leadville 100 is what really brought that town, the town of Leadville, Colorado, which claims to be the highest populated city in America. It brought it out of poverty. And so the commissioner of Leadville at the time, I think it was in the 80s, he had this idea, hey, let's have a race. And over the decades, it has just blossomed. And now they have festivals on the weekends and Lifetime corporation brought it out, just like Lifetime Fitness. And so now during the summer months, they have a marathon in May, which goes up Mosquito Pass, which goes up over 13,000 feet. And then in June, they have Silver Rush 50, which goes through abandoned mining towns. You see all these mine sites, it's just really gorgeous. But what you have to do in these races, this year, I went out 2.5 weeks earlier to acclimatize because especially I just moved to Austin, Texas, which isn't high elevation either. I was living in New Orleans. You're talking about a negative sea level elevation. And so you just get hit with that the lack of oxygen that's up there. And so you can either go out there early. Some people, they'll go out there. Let's say the race starts Saturday morning at 4 a.m. They get there on Friday night because elevation doesn't really affect you until you get within 3,000 feet. But if you're not staying up there long, it's not going to affect you as much. But if you go above 3,000 feet of what you're used to and you stay there generally for more than 24 hours, that's when the effects start to take place. Because when you start looking at the science of it, one benefit that I did have.
Oh, Rich, you muted yourself, pal. Rich, you muted yourself here, buddy. So we got some comments coming in here from the side here. We got Shinku Gold who says, I can't run 10 miles here. What else we got here? We got coming in. Daniel Hall says, chaos always speeds success depending on how we choose to wield it. Rich, you're muted there, pal. And what else we got here? We got, yes, Christina, I'm doing the do-do. Shanugal says 10 miles and I'm close. Pop Murph says he's trying to be humble. What else we got here? We got Shingo, lower oxygen means more fatigue. And Double A Michael says exactly. Richie, we got your vertical. It looks like your microphone's muted there, pal. I'm not sure how that happened during the conversation here. We're talking with Rich Ingram about the leopard, where the dude goes and battles not only the altitude, but also everything along the way. You're hanging out with Keith John, C Marty Fit, Mornings in the Lab. When you guys wrap your head around this idea of endurance, Marty, could you imagine running 100 miles?
No, man. I used to hate the preseason conditioning tests in college. That was 1 mile.
Johnny, what about you, man?
The thing that I can't say that I'm big on endurance, but I will say that anytime I get in these scenarios, like some days I first discovered this when I was learning when I squatted to failure. And I realized that, and those sets were long. Those sets were sometimes a couple of minutes. And I would realize once I really got into it, as we talked about one of my training philosophies, deep water. When I got in deep water, is a whole new world opened up. And so obviously it's a short endurance, it's muscle endurance. But then the flip side is if I ever do something crazy, get on Terry's stair mill or do something like that, there's a certain point where your world changes. Your brain has dumped enough positive chemistry. It's a place you want to stay. Yes, is it difficult? Yes, is there some anxiety because you're pushing yourself? But it's once you get there, you want to stay. Now, granted, I'd love to hear Rich's perspective on this.
Yeah, Rich is back with us here. And Richie, versus I would die just trying to do 20 miles. The humble Rich here who's doing 100 along the way here. But Rich, continue leaning into that conversation.
Yeah, I don't know where I got cut off, guys. I apologize. So for me, I'm just coming back into this. I don't know what you guys heard. I was talking about physiologically of plasma and red blood cells, which
the body's ability to adapt to that altitude is where we got cut off.
Yeah. And so in high heat and humidity, that's what happens to your body. It starts producing more plasma. So I did have that going for me. I would choose to do my runs at 3 o'clock, my long runs, 5-6 hours at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So my body would start to get used to developing physiologically. And another thing that you have to think about is what happens to your body as far as nutritionally. So when you get above, and this is where guys like John and Marty, at first glance, when you talk about eating potato chips and drinking Cokes and stuff like that, it sounds gross, right? But it's all the training I've done up to that. So I eat a healthy diet. I have a healthy diet of fats, proteins, etc. Because once you get past 90 to 120 minutes of running, your body starts to become more efficient. And so it starts burning fat for fuel instead of carbohydrates. And that's what you want. That's at 90, 120 minutes, right? And so everything that I've done up to that point has provided me that opportunity to be that efficient. Once you get past 5-6 hours, 7 hours, whatever it is, your body will burn
anything. It's in a survival setting. You could literally eat a dog turd and it would find nutrients. Literally, guaranteed it would. It sounds nasty as hell, but your body will find nutrient in anything you put down your mouth in a survival setting.
I've got a few clips of John Addis about us humans eating dog shit. We're gonna have a whole highlights episode of John referring to humans just consuming it.
It's not a preferred method, by any means.
But it's true. At the same time, you have to be careful, but it's good to switch it up during that point. Once you get past marathon level, you're at a master's level of running. And so it's not just about your running specifically, but now you've introduced weight, strength training into your regimen. I'm very careful with how much I sleep. If I didn't get enough sleep one night, I'll make sure I take a nap. I will schedule a nap because that's where, and marathon training is the same. So and again, don't take this the wrong way, but unless you're a professional, that's for speed. Everything past marathon, once you get in the ultra world, it's less speed, more endurance, right? So a lot of guys that are trying to do marathons, they want to qualify for Boston, which they actually just made tougher. I think you needed 3 hours or 2:55. That's that's like a 650-minute mile.
Jesus Christ. Under 3 hours to get in that thing now?
Yeah, and a lot of people, you can do fundraising, and most races have a lot of stuff like that to be able to get in. But once you get to the ultra world, it's about time on your feet. And that's what it is. And once you start looking at the amount of hours and you're logging, let's say, because I'm going for weekly hours. So if I'm logging 15 hours in a week, it's not just that. Now we have to look at how are you strength training, because we want to make sure that the body's not imbalanced. Because at that point, that's how we get these overuse injuries, Van syndrome. A lot of people might get plantar fasciitis and stuff like that. So we have to put in strength. We have to do cross training. So cycling is a good one. Now we our warm up, our recovery is that much more important. And so all these those things come into play. So it's not just getting out there and running it. But I was fortunate enough Leadville where I had, that's a master's level race where I was prepared for it. So I wasn't sidelined.
Oh, Rich went mute again. Hey,
Can you hear me?
There you go. Yep.
There we go.
Along the way, pal. Keep going. No, you muted it. So listen, here's what we're going to do. You're here with Keith, John, C. Marty Fit, and Rich Ingram here. Mornings in the lab. We're dropping into the center stage segment. But at this point in the show, we're going to get over to the C. Marty Fit.
We can hear Rich.
Yeah, we're gonna bring him back here in a moment though, because we're gonna head into the fit tip and we're gonna come back, Richie, and we're gonna continue the conversation around the Leadville 100 on the second half of the show. But right now, we are going to do this.